Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday here at Hyde Cottage, but I got mail anyway. And it feels kind of strange to do a bleak and barren video when I did a mail haul, but it also feels kind of strange to let a Sunday go without a tag. And I have a tag. I was actually tagged in something. So I thought, I would do it anyway. And to heck with procedure. It's the History Trail tag, which I think was created by Novel Nomad, and I was tagged by Richardson Reads. And it's all about history, and it revolves around, the conceit of it is that you're on a trail. And I don't think we're ever going to trek on a trail together, all of us and me. So this will be the closest thing we can do to it. Question number one is first steps. What book, movie, person, / whatever introduced you to history or historical fiction? I'm just going to boil this down to one answer. Because it's the same person, and it's something that I've mentioned on this channel before. I had a great teacher. I had one great teacher. I've had a lot of great teachers in my life, but I had one that pulled the curtain back, one that opened my eyes to reading, just in general, whether it's history or historical fiction or anything else. So it was just one person, and I cannot thank him enough. Question number two, well-trodden path. What is your favorite historical recommendation? Book, place, and movie. For book, of course, it's an impossible question because I would need to know what you want to read. Do you want a narrative history, or do you want a scholarly history? Do you want to tell me what period? Or do you want heavy on sociological trends or heavy on personality? I need to know a lot more. I used to hate it when I worked in bookstores. I used to hate it when a customer would come in and say, "I need a recommendation for a history lover." And I'd say, okay, tell me about them. And they'd say, I don't know anything about them. I know they like history. Okay. Thanks, Seymour. So I don't have a recommendation for a historical book for this question. If you want a recommendation, feel free, absolutely, to get in touch with me. And I will ask some medical questions, and I will eventually triangulate on something in 10 or 11 titles that'll be perfect for you, but I don't have one blanket recommendation. As far as a historical place goes, that would be Boston, the birthplace of American liberty. And as far as a movie goes, I mentioned it just the other day, it's The Lion in Winter. It's the movie adaptation of James Goldman's stage play, The Lion in Winter, about King Henry II, his wife Eleanor of Aquitaine, and their son Richard the Lionheart, which is just amazing. It's just an amazing movie. I'm going to resist the impulse to quote any more of it to you, but I highly recommend it. Especially since, if you're a millennial, if you're in your 20s, and you look at Netflix and something like that, or maybe a big book of movies or something, you're going to look at this old poster from what will be to you the Dark Ages, and you might look at the poster and think there's nothing there that's going to zing the way I like things to zing, and you'll be dead wrong. If you just look at that poster, you'll be dead wrong. Same thing if you look at the poster for Beckett, the movie version of Beckett, which stars Richard Burton as Thomas Becket, and in an unprecedented Hollywood bit of trivia, it stars Peter O'Toole as Henry II, 10 years earlier than the character in The Lion in Winter, and the movie was made 10 years earlier. The same actor playing the same character, 2 different points in his life, separated by real-time life, by the real-time 10 years. And if you looked at Beckett's poster, you would think, just another historical drama, and it blisters with brilliance. Anyway, Lion in Winter would be my recommendation. Question number 3, good boots. What is your favorite historical fashion era? That would be the present day. Very much so. It's present day America. The present day in the West. The present day in the West, in the parts of the West that are not governed by theocracies, so that you can wear whatever you want. The history of mankind was crawling and groaning and scraping and striving for a time when, once you were an adult, you could wear whatever you want. So I'm certainly not pining for any time before then. Plus, I'm fairly certain that I am, well, we won't get into the details, but I'm fairly certain I'm the only person on BookTube who has ever actually put on a toga. And it's a nightmare. So, no thanks. No, present day, 2017. Question number 4, close to home. What is a historical read set in your home country? And I'm, of course, going to localize further than just my home country. I'm going to concentrate on the greatest city in the world, Boston, Massachusetts. And I have 2 recommendations, one fiction, one nonfiction. The fiction is by Tyrone Martin. It's called A Most Fortunate Ship. And it is an incredibly lively narrative history of the USS Constitution, of Old Ironsides, a warship from the Revolutionary era that is birthed here in Boston, and she's in dry dock right now, undergoing extensive repairs. And most Americans, I would say probably 99.9% of Americans, don't realize how much of their history depends on her. Depends on what she did during the War of 1812. I point her out when people come to Boston. I sing her praises, and A Most Fortunate Ship does a wonderful job. So I highly recommend it. And then for fiction, it's a novel that is all about Boston, even though Boston is never mentioned in it. It's The Last Hurrah by Edwin O'Connor, which was just had, unfortunately, I don't know about The Most Fortunate Ship, but with The Last Hurrah, at least I know for sure that if you went into a bookstore, you could find a copy, because the University of Chicago Press just did a lovely paperback reprint. So thing has a second lease on life for a while anyway. And it's a comic novel about ward politics, about the vanished world of ward politics, Boston ward politics. The city is never mentioned, but it couldn't any clearer be Boston. And Frank Skeffington, the multiple times elected city official, who he's a silver-haired old rogue in the book, is clearly James Michael Curley, Boston's legendary mayor. So no matter how horrible that might have sounded to you, that description, no matter how stuffy it might seem, I think you would love it. So it gets my recommendation for fiction. And question number 5, Trail Not Taken. What historical errors do you avoid? I honestly, I thought about this, and there aren't any. As long as the writer, fiction or nonfiction, is doing their job, I'll go anywhere. So I don't think I have an error. Question number 6, Trail Map. What historical reads are on your TBR? This is the point in which I would hold up my iPad and show you, but unfortunately my iPad seems to be dying. It's wheezing and groaning, and I hesitate even to wake it. And so I wrote them down instead. I know, so primitive, but I'll put the information in down below the video so that you can at least see the words. I have 3 that I picked, but the list could be much longer. The first one is Victoria's Century by David Cannadine, who I think is an author I've mentioned before. He's a British historian who I just love. I think he's fantastic. And he's doing a nice, juicy book on 19th century Britain, on the pinnacle of the British Empire. So I can't wait. And then The Lost Kings by Amy License, which is a book about the houses of York and Lancaster, and also the Tudor dynasty. But it's not your typical narrative run through. Instead, what she concentrates on are all of the potentially pivotal young men in that whole 100-year era who died young, who died before they could become what they might have become. So it's a big look at might have beens, and it sounds fascinating. And then the last one, I promise, is Farewell to the Horse by Ulrich Rolf, which is a book. It just got just effusively praised I think it was the TLS where I read the review. It's a history of mankind's relationship with the horse that is based on the rather shocking, but you really can't argue with it, premise that relationship is ending. That 10,000 years of mankind and horses doing things together is almost over. That relationship, for good or ill, whatever comes next, that relationship is largely over. I would ordinarily if I got the book, I would you know be mildly interested, but the critical responses to it have been wonderful. So I'm deeply eager to read it. And then question number 7 is pioneers. What historical person inspires you? And before I list them, I want to make sure to recommend the answer that Richardson Reeds gives to this question, which it's really good. And I don't know if inspires is the right word. I think he's right that everybody in history is just human. But I have 5 figures in history that I just find endlessly fascinating. And 2 of them, Erasmus you know already, but 2 of the others, President William Howard Taft and Samuel Adams, fascinate me especially because they lack the hunger for fame. They lack the kind of ambition that usually is the absolute bedrock prerequisite for us to be reading about somebody in history at all. Whether they succeed or fail, whether they aim big or small, usually they have to have that or we're not reading about them at all. And in the case of people like Taft or Samuel Adams, they're not background players. They actually stood in the spotlight of history. But there's a humanity about them that I find very approachable. I like it very much. And then question number 8 is to tag your fellow history nerds. And I have a few people I want to name, although I'd love to hear this from anybody who's interested in history. Although I want to point out first that even 2 years ago on BookTube, it would have been almost pointless to say tag your fellow history nerds because there wouldn't have been enough to tag. A tag like this wouldn't have had any legs at all. So I think that's progress of a kind. But I want to tag Jess at Garden Scriptorium, of course. I want to tag Elisa at Paper Bits. I want to tag Britt and Britta. But really, like I said, anybody who's interested in history, I'd love to hear your answers. And that is the History Trail tag. I want to thank Richardson Reeds for tagging me, even though it turned out not to be strictly psychologically necessary, because I did have mail today. But I had a blast anyway. So I'll see you soon, and thank you, BookTube.